is that you're welcome here. Make yourself at home.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar for midwives interested in moving to New Zealand. I'm Jo. I head up the health recruitment here at Working In, based in Auckland. And this is Denny.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar.
So we thought we'd just start off by introducing ourselves and just telling you a little about the business before we get into some real grunty details about being a midwife in New Zealand and how you can get here and registration and those kind of things. So just a little background first. So Zinni, just tell us a little bit about what you do and I guess what you like about New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks, Jo. So I'm a licensed immigration advisor, and actually here at Working In, we have 22 licensed advisors. So we're one of the largest teams of advisors, I guess, in New Zealand. I manage the team, and we oversee literally hundreds of applications and provide tailored advice to our clients, such as yourselves potentially. I love New Zealand. I've grown up here. I moved to New Zealand when I was a teenager with my family, so I've gone through that whole migrant journey, as have most of our staff members here. It's the work-life balance, it's the access to the beach, it's great food, lots of different cultures. So it's wonderful.
Great country. Thank you, Zinni. So, and myself, I'm also a migrant. So I've done the migrant journey. I moved out here from the UK 21 years ago. And my role here is, like, as I said just previously, I head up the health recruitment team. So we focus on helping health professionals from overseas to secure jobs in New Zealand, work closely with the visa team. And we also offer some settlement services as well. So we can really help you from start to finish. So, and I guess for me, just thinking about what I love about New Zealand the most, there's two things actually. One is ocean swimming, that's my big thing, and the other thing is the food. That is just, yeah, a lot of food here. Really good quality food. So, okay, so let's just move on, and I'll just run through our little agenda today so that you know what's coming up. So we're just going to talk a little bit about working in healthcare in New Zealand. And then I want to share with you actually about midwifery in the industry. And then we'll talk about getting your registration. So how do you do this? What's the checklist? What are the steps? And then Zinni is going to talk about understanding immigration and visas. What's the new policy? What if you're coming with your partner and children? How does that all work? So she's going to cover all that off for you. And then we're going to talk about advising you on the best way to secure a job. And we'll finish with some tips to summarize how you can best be successful in moving. So first of all, I just wanted to talk a little bit about working in the healthcare system in New Zealand. You know, we've brought hundreds of professionals over here, whether that be midwives, nurses, doctors, physios, and you know, the feedback that we get is that it is a quality work environment. Like, we know that we've got very well-equipped hospitals and modern facilities. And as the population is growing, there's new hospitals being built, there's hospitals being upgraded and extended. And most of all, what we find is whilst obviously you're still busy as a health professional, we do get the feedback that it is just not quite so pressurized. And, you know, a perfect example would be a nurse that I helped who came to work over in New Zealand in ED, and she'd come from the UK doing 16 hours a day and not even getting time for lunch, you know, and she said, I can't believe it, Jo, you know, I get told to stop and have a cup of tea, you know, after I've been at work for 2 hours. And so I just love that little story. But you know, basically it does seem that, and I mean, obviously don't work in the health sector myself, but all the feedback I get does seem that it's a lot less stressful,
More balanced.
yeah, more balanced, and it's very culturally diverse, and sort of 40% plus of the sector here are trained overseas. So you've got every different culture. So
Lots of varied experiences.
yeah, that's lots of experiences sort of fit in. So that just gives you kind of a real sort of top line overview. I just wanted to show you this, some pictures here of a few people that we've helped to move over. So they're just obviously out enjoying the bush and the beach and the snow and the pubs. And so yeah, it's just nice to sort of see. And we keep in touch with all our people that we help move over here that often update us on where they're at and what they're doing. So it's not just about helping you now and helping you to move to New Zealand. It's all about that long-term kind of connection as well.
That whole journey.
Yeah, the whole journey. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about midwifery in New Zealand, because it is a little bit different to the rest of the world. And looking at, I think we've got about 100 people online, and I know that there's a large proportion from the UK, and then we've got, I think, somebody from Singapore and the US, Ireland, Malaysia. So there's a real mix. And so I just want to do a little overview of midwifery, and then we'll talk about registration, and I'll try and keep it sort of as relevant to everybody. And so I'll just pop another slide up, which I love because I love this this photo. So obviously we know New Zealand isn't a huge, well, I mean, it's not a big country, right? It's not a huge population. It's like 5 million people in New Zealand. To put it in perspective, I think there's a 66 million in the UK, I think, and New Zealand's the same size. So when you look at these numbers, there's 3,300 midwives with a current practicing certificate in New Zealand. It kind of seems really, really low, but you know, that's just kind of correlates with the population. So maternity service in New Zealand, it is an integrated system of primary, tertiary, and secondary. And basically all midwifery in New Zealand is free. So all that maternity support is free, unless you choose to use a private specialist, but it's all funded by the government. So what I just wanted to share with you here is there's kind of 3 types of midwives in New Zealand, and I might just take this slide off because we don't need to do that permanently. So there's sort of 3 main types of midwives in New Zealand, and I just want to explain the difference and what your best pathway is. So you've got everybody in New Zealand gets a lead maternity carer, so an LMC. And those LMCs basically are with you from conception right through to 6 weeks postpartum. Now those LMCs are actually self-employed, and so everybody gets assigned one of those LMCs. And so because they're self-employed in New Zealand, then obviously coming here from overseas,
yeah.
Do you want to talk about that? You can't,
Yeah, so we will talk a little bit more later as well, but essentially if you're coming to New Zealand to work, you will need to have an offer of employment from a New Zealand employer. So that's probably not an option to begin with.
Not to begin with, no. So I mean, it might be something you do in a year's time or whatever, but
gained your residency or in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And also getting to know the New Zealand system. So primarily if you're coming to New Zealand to be a midwife, you're going to be what's called a core midwife. Now, a core midwife is what it is. You provide core midwifery services, but those are in a hospital. And so you'd be working across all the different departments, so that from antenatal to labour to birthing to postnatal. And so you might rotate among them, or depending on the hospital and the size of the hospital, you might have a position just working on the labour ward. And so that's kind of the one that we really need to focus on, because and so you would be employed by a hospital, and that's providing 24-hour care 7 days a week. So you'd be on rotating shifts for that. And so it's really good to understand that, and to know that, but that doesn't have to be your lifelong journey in New Zealand. Good just to get in, understand the system. And then some hospitals do employ the odd kind of community midwife. So you're employed by the hospital, and you are assigned a caseload of women to provide continuity of care. But those roles are there's not as many of those roles, and it's harder coming from overseas to get one of those positions. So really, we need to sort of focus on that core midwife role. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Now just another lovely cutesy image here. And so I just wanted to talk about job opportunities in New Zealand. Huge, significant opportunities for core midwives all throughout New Zealand. And some hospitals have got primary, secondary and tertiary facilities. Some have just got primary and secondary. And so depending on the hospital, depending on the size of the hospital, will depend on what they offer. But there are significant opportunities. So for a midwife looking to move here, we can look at different locations and
different options, different settings.
Yeah, what city do you want to live in? Do you want to live more rurally? Do you want to live by the beach? What it does is, because we know there's a broad number of opportunities, and it gives you that bit of flexibility in terms of choosing where you might want to live. Like with some roles, you might have to be more located in Auckland, but with midwives, really, you've got a big choice there. There's full and part-time roles. However, you need to do a minimum of 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
So from a visa purpose, you need to work a minimum of 30 hours a week. But what I'm saying there is that, you might be on a full-time contract, which will be 40 hours a week, or you could be on a part-time contract of 32 hours a week, for example. So depending on what the hospital needs are. And then I just wanted to say a little bit about the most midwives are members of MIRAS, the Midwifery Employee Representation Advisory Service. So 90% are members of that service, and they work with the government to put together all the collective agreements around pay and conditions.
So the union.
Yeah, yeah, basically. The good news for everybody is that they've just negotiated new pay rates in New Zealand, and we've seen increases from 7.4% to 10% across the board. And I just put a little bit up here about that if you start as a grad, you start at $65,000, and then step 7 of a registered midwife is $84,153. However, those are kind of your starting points. So a registered midwife will go from step 1 to 7, and then you get into what's called your designated senior role. So depending on your experience, then you may be above those pay rates. Okay, so I think that, I'm not sure, I'm just having a look to see if we've got any questions. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on the chat. And we will try and answer them the best we can throughout the session. Otherwise, we will, when we do a follow-up afterwards, we'll give you some answers to that. So, okay, so moving on next, I think what we'll do, because I'm sure you're a bit sick of my voice, we're gonna go.
Formative.
I'm learning a lot. Thank you. I think why don't we just have a chat about an immigration policy, and then I'll talk about registration. It's pretty exciting for midwives. So I'm going to hand you over to Zinni, and she's just going to cover these key topics first of all. And so I'll just pop those up on the screen.
Yeah.
Yes, well, let Zinni run through those.
Okay. I've just seen a question on the chat, so I'll just dive into that before going into the immigration bit. So how many hours per week is the full-time contract?
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah. So full-time in New Zealand is 40 hours.
Yeah.
So that's what they call one FTE.
Mm.
And then you might have like 0.94 FTE, 0.8 FTE is 32 hours. And so it just depends on I guess what the department needs, but also there is an opportunity to say
You got more hours.
oh yeah, or less. If you say, well, actually, I don't want to do 40 hours a week, I want to do 32, then there is that opportunity to have those discussions, whether when you've had an interview or when you've heard you've been successful. So good just to bear that in mind.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And from an immigration perspective, to apply for a work visa, you need a minimum guaranteed of 30 hours per week. So as long as you've got that, then you can apply for a work visa under the new policy.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about the new policy because there have been some confusion. We have heard from people submitting wrong applications or, because it is a new system, even though the name of it is similar to what a category used to be called. So the new policy is called the Accredited Employer Work Visa. This came into effect in July this year. And lots of people confuse it with the previous category, which is called the Work to Residence Talent Accredited Employer Visa. So
this is one shorter.
Yeah, it's shorter. So just bear in mind, don't submit the wrong application because then that could delay things and you may not get a refund. Make sure you're doing it under the new Accredited Employee Work Visa.
So what does that mean, Zinni?
So with this new policy, there are new processes and new requirements. The first thing is the employer that is offering you a job, they must be accredited with Immigration New Zealand. So that's a mandatory requirement. Most of the healthcare providers that we are working with, they are accredited. So that's good news.
So what does it mean to be accredited though from a candidate's point of view?
Yeah, so being accredited essentially means Immigration New Zealand has assessed that employer and they tick the boxes of being fit to employ. So they've got good financials, they've got good HR processes, they can look after their employees well. Especially with new migrant workers arriving into New Zealand. There are new mandatory requirements. Employers need to provide settlement support. So this is just Immigration New Zealand and the government wanting to put more onus on the employer to look after their migrant employees, to give you a better journey right from the beginning. So having ticked that big box, the next step before you can apply for a work visa is a job check. So the employer goes through a process of submitting an application saying, oh, we're looking for 5 midwives in Waikato. And these are the terms and conditions. Immigration assesses that employment agreement, making sure it ticks all the boxes of the employment regulations. Just so you know, when you are getting an employment offer, it is meeting regulations. And they assess that and then they grant the tokens. So with the tokens, you then go onto the link that gets sent to you, or if you're using an advisor, it'll be sent to the advisor that can prepare the application on your behalf. And you'll need to provide things like your medicals, your police checks, your qualifications, registration, work experience, etc. And then that's the work visa application. So 3 stages: accreditation, job check, and then the work visa application.
So the employer does the accreditation, the employer has to do the job check,
Yes.
and then the job check token they'll provide to you, or they will supply it to your licensed immigration advisor if you've got somebody looking after your visa.
Yeah.
So those are the key things. And what about, because there's a new green list of occupations, isn't there? What's that about?
Yeah, so lots of you might have heard of the long-term skill shortage list. So the long-term skill shortage list is no longer in play, so that's closed. What's now in effect is the green list of occupations. So it's similar to the long-term skill shortage, but the occupations are slightly different. Midwives are on the green list, which is great. It's essentially a list of occupations that the government has come up with to say we need these highly skilled professions in New Zealand. So we want to make it easier for employers to recruit, and also for whoever is working in those occupations to have a pathway to residence.
Yeah.
So 2 things, easier to get the work visa application, and pathway to residence as well.
So if you're a midwife, Zinni, so you come into New Zealand on an AEWV, so the accredited employer work visa. So you need that visa to be able to come into New Zealand and work.
Yes.
How long before you can get residency?
Yeah, so under the green list, there are tier 1 occupations and tier 2 occupations. Midwives are on the tier 2 list of occupations. So once you are here on that work visa, you've been working for 2 years, you'll need to meet things like English requirements, health requirements. The job offer needs to meet certain criteria as well. But after 2 years, you can then be eligible to apply for residency. There is an age requirement though.
That's a good point to remember.
55 years or under.
Yes.
But yeah, if you meet all the criteria, then you can apply for that residency under the green list.
Yeah. So if you're about to turn 55,
if you're still 55, you can.
Yeah.
Once you've turned 56.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't do that. Okay. And what about Zinni? Because I know we get a lot of questions around this. About say you're a midwife. You've got a job in New Zealand, so you're the primary or the principal applicant for the visa. What about their partner or children? We get lots of people coming on their own, and then we get lots of people coming with families. So how does that work?
That's a really good question. So in the next slide, we'll talk about maybe we can pop that on.
Let's do that.
So the visa eligibility and pathway. So obviously everyone's pathways are different, your situations are different, you've got different experience, different age, etc. So what we do recommend in terms of how you get started is to first do a free appraisal. And then if we assess the information that you provided, and we do then suggest to do a full visa assessment, which we call the My Visa Path. So during this step of the process, we ask for information of yourself. If you've got family members, how old are they? What professions are they in? They may want to work as well. And good news for midwives, because you are on the green list, it does mean you are eligible to support your partner, so your spouse, on a partner visa.
And can they work when they get to New Zealand?
Yes. So we will need to look at individual situations as well, because the partner also needs to meet like certain criteria in terms of your relationship. But if you do, then you can apply for a partner work visa, which has open work rights. So unlike the accredited employer work visa, which is linked to the employer, the partner visa is open. There's no specific employer that's noted. You can work in any occupation, anywhere, for any employer. So
There's a lot of information you can digest. You can see how it can be helpful to have a licensed immigration advisor to help you out. Yeah. So okay. And then what happens after you've done the full assessment?
So we provide a report to you. So one of our licensed immigration advisors will sit down, look at all the information, and then we'll write a quite detailed report to you in terms of your pathway to New Zealand, for you and your family. And then you get to have a 1 hour consultation with the advisor as well to talk through the options, because maybe you didn't provide an information on the form. It's just much easier to talk it through and have your questions answered during that consultation.
And if there's any things that you realise might come up that are going to stand in the way of you possibly getting a visa, but at least knowing that up front, you can find a workaround. But if you apply for your visa and something crops up
that could
in your
delay
medical,
things, you could have invested in a lot of money to get certain things done, but it's just much de-risking, and lots of people do find it valuable.
And so you do the consultation, and then if they want to, they can sign up with the contract of services.
So if you do want to sign up for us to assist you with your whole pathway, so your visa applications for you and your family, then we will provide you with our contract of services, and one of our licensed immigration advisors will be the lead advisor that's managing your applications for you and walking beside you throughout this whole journey.
Cool. And so really, you know, what we're saying is you're getting tailored advice, up to date advice.
So many changes.
And managing that and supporting you with that all the way through. And really what it does, and gosh, I find it really helps in terms of knowing and managing your time frame for moving. So an employer will be like, oh, okay, so you're managing the visa, great. So that means that we've got a bit more of a definitive time frame when you know somebody's going to arrive and be able to start work.
They can plan.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks for that. Now we're just going to move back to talk about registration, because I know that's, I mean, obviously everybody that wants to be midwife in New Zealand from overseas needs to be registered. Probably a little bit dry to talk about this, so I'll try and make it a little bit interesting, but
that's so important.
It is critical. And the thing is, what I will say is that if you are serious about moving to New Zealand and haven't started the midwifery registration, then start it, because by the time you've submitted your documents and done the application form and waited the sort of 6 weeks for approval, before you know it, like 4 months will just pass like that. So factor that in. So here's the 5 main sort of checklists. So I've pulled this information off the Midwifery Council website just to kind of summarize it for you, make it a bit easier to digest. So the first thing is that you've got to have a qualification that's equivalent to the New Zealand Bachelor's of Midwifery. You need to be registered currently in the country where you received your education, and if you've then left that country and working somewhere else, then you need registration in that country too. Now this is really interesting, because this was only announced last week that they have now lowered the number of years experience. Hi everybody, apparently we are live again. So I think what we were talking about is we were talking about the registration and got having fit practice. So you've got to prove that you're mentally, physically fit and of good character to get registration. And the other final thing is, if English is not your first language, then you have to do an English test, and you have to get a score of 7 across all 4 bands, and that's in IELTS. So that's English, speaking, writing, listening, and reading. So yes, so you've got it 7 across all those in IELTS, or an A or a B in if you do OET. So that, if English is not your first language, becomes part of your registration requirement.
And it's good that if you've done the IELTS, it's valid for 2 years.
Yes.
So you can use that potentially for the residence application.
Yes, exactly. So we might just, we don't think you can see these slides now, but that's okay. We are just going to go on to the next slide. Next challenge. Right, okay. We'll just have to sort of ad-lib this because we can't seem to get into the slide sorter. Basically, the next part I was going to take you through is the steps of the registration process. And so the first thing that you do, the first thing that you need to do is go onto the Midwifery Council website and create an account. Now, I think that's probably the simplest thing to do. And then you need to actually complete an application. So that's what it'll ask you to do. And then once you've completed that application, in order to take the next step, then you need to pay the registration fee. And the registration fee is 1,350 New Zealand dollars. And the next step from there is to submit all your documents. There's a whole raft of documents that you need to submit. Things like your identity documents, your police check, your medical certificate, university transcripts, CVs, references. And actually what we've got is we've put together our own midwifery guide. We've taken information from the council website, fully understood every little nook and cranny about what you need to do, and we put it into a 3-page, I think it's 3-page guide, with easy to follow steps. And so when we do the follow-up to this webinar, we will send a copy of that. We'll give you the option to download that, because I think you'll find that really helpful rather than trying to navigate around the council website.
Lot of pages.
Yeah, just to read through the steps basically. So once you've submitted all your documents, you will wait for the council's decision, which takes about 6 weeks. And then what you need to do is, so this is really important, you need to complete a cultural competence for midwifery practice in New Zealand. And that's a course that you do online, and that costs $450. Now you have to finish that before you can apply for your practicing certificate. And so that's really important that you do that. Now, what I will say here is that some employers will pay for that competency course, and they may even pay for your registration. And so just good to keep tabs on everything. You know, lots of employers are wanting to hire midwives. And so what I tend to do when I'm working with midwives is make sure that when we're negotiating your package, that we get a good relocation support for you, assistance, so that, and that covers some of these costs as well. So it's $450 to do that cultural competence program.
So there are 2 steps even with the midwifery registration. So you need to get the registration first.
Well, you haven't, so you apply for the registration, but you can't get your APC until you've done that cultural competency course. Yeah. And then you'll get your APC, and to get your APC, you need to have evidence of employment and supervision. So you've got to have your job contract, and you've got to, the employer's got to confirm that they're going to be supervising you, which is kind of a 12-month period, and nothing too heavy, but that's just part of the program. And then it's important to know that once you have done your you got your registration, you'll have conditions on your scope of practice. And what that means is that you have to, we were talking before about the core midwife, so you have to be employed as a midwife. You can't be self-employed LMC. You're not allowed to prescribe medications, and there's an overseas competence program that you must also complete within 2 years. So there's a number of sort of courses that you can do online, and some sort of face-to-face, like newborn protocols, and different courses. There's about 4 or 5 of them. And again, they cost about $450 each, but those are the ones, again, that will get your employer to fund those while you're working for them.
So there seems to be like a lot of paperwork and requirements, but a lot of these are similar to the visa requirements.
Yes.
So if you've got a job offer, it ticks both sides. Done IELTS ticks both sides.
Yeah.
Collect your paperwork for police checks, transcript, etc. You can use it for both.
Yeah, exactly. So if you kind of get yourself organized, then you don't have to do everything twice. So so what I wanted to talk about now, and hopefully we've still got people online because we are going a bit over time now because we had our little technical hiccup, is with just regards to finding a job. Now, I know that's obviously a very, very important topic for people. So the first thing is, you've got 2 choices. One of them is you go and find a job yourself,
online.
apply for vacancies that you see, and that's okay. The problem with that, though, is that employers don't necessarily know where you're at in the process, when you're moving, do your skills match, and
can you move?
Can you get registration? And so some employers are not as it's not as appealing, let's just say. So what we really do suggest for you is getting really prepared, and make sure you've got get a really good CV, get your CV looking really good. Start your registration, look into the visas, get yourself in the best possible position, and take a targeted approach to looking for a job. Think about, well, where do you want to live? Okay, so let's look at the opportunities in that particular area. Employers don't really like it, I think, if you just kind of almost spam employers. If you don't have a plan, you send sort of CVs everywhere.
It's about giving the employers some level of certainty as well.
Yeah,
that you are committed to the process.
That's right.
Started.
Yeah, that motivation and commitment is really key. And then, of course, obviously, one of the things we'll talk about is our help that we can offer you in terms of finding you a job. And so, we've got a team here of health recruiters that have got relationships all throughout New Zealand. We're up to date on market knowledge, we're up to date on opportunities. We know where the jobs are. We know where the jobs
to lots of employers
every day. Yeah, we know where the jobs are going to be in the future as well. So if you say, well, we're not moving for 6 to 8 months, I know who to talk to. And so, if you choose to work with us to help you find a job, there's no charge to that. That's a free service. And what you will get from that is, we'll do a consultation with you. We'll put together a plan for you, make sure your CV's up to scratch. We will present you to employers when we've secured you, and we'll organise the interviews, and we will also give you interview prep, and so help you to prep for that interview. And then we follow everything up along the way, keeping everything moving along, because the DHBs, the district health boards in New Zealand, are super busy, and the process can really drag on sometimes. So we keep on top of it. And then finally, it's making sure that your employment contract looks right. We'll review that and make sure that you get a good relocation package. So those are all things that we wrap around in our recruitment process. And then when we've secured you a job, then we hand you over to the visa team. But it's really good to have already had that conversation with the visa team, because you can start getting prepared with those same documentations, right?
Yeah, you can even get started without having a job first.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what are your plans, and we can make a path for you. We can create a path for you based on what your intentions are, when do you want to move, etc.
Right. And we work very closely in together, and so that's really helpful. So hopefully that kind of all makes a lot of sense. And actually, one thing we haven't mentioned though as well is if you are using our visa services, depending on your needs and whether you're coming on your own or with your family, whether you just want to do the accredited employer work visa or you want to get set up to do the whole residency, then we'll provide you with a quote, which will include the disbursements for the government and also our fees for helping with that. So the last thing we're going to do is just run through preparation. The preparation and planning is key. We really want you to maximize your success and make that journey easy. And that's what we do. That's what our job is. We do this every day. I mean, at the moment, I think we're processing 700 visas right at this moment in time. So, it's huge. Lots of candidates arriving at the minute, ready to start work, lots of candidates being interviewed at the moment. So this is what we do every day. So running through the preparation steps, do you want to do that, Zinni?
Yeah, we have covered a lot of information, so this is really just a key summary. First thing is checking that you meet the requirements of the registration for midwifery. There's lots of paperwork involved, lots of steps involved, but that's where you can get started.
And we'll send you the guide that we've put together on that.
And then of course you want to check if you are eligible to apply for a visa in New Zealand for yourself and your family. So with the visa process in itself, they start with a free appraisal. And then you can move on to the full consultation if you wish to.
We'll send you a link to do the free appraisal in the follow-up email as well.
Well, don't worry if you don't remember all of this, because we will guide you through it anyway.
And you'll get a recording of the video. Hopefully you can cut the bit out where we had technical difficulties.
And then very important, because you do need a job to make your move to New Zealand. So you need the job to apply for the visa and to complete the midwifery APC.
Yeah, exactly.
So make sure your CVs are up to date. We can also guide you on how to present your CVs, what information to put on it, because I think from what we see, different countries, different people
slightly
present
different.
It differently.
And it's just when you want to make it easier for an employer to digest the information. And so we'll just help with a bit of formatting and things. And the other thing is to meet the team. So we'll give you a link to be able to follow up and do that if you're interested in meeting with the health recruitment team.
And then if you're already in a process, we do assist with relocation, so moving your pets to New Zealand, moving funds, etc. So we do partner with lots of experts in this
lots
area.
of global experts. And so we've got a relocation expert that's actually based in the UK, and so you can have a chat with him and to organise your relocation, and he'll introduce you to lots of our partners across all the aspects that you need to do with your move.
And we've been doing this for many years. So
20 years? 20 years, I don't think we mentioned that at the beginning, did we? No. And Zinni and I have worked for the business for a long time. And we love it still.
We do. And then of course you want to know more about New Zealand, find out the places that you would like to live in, which areas you want to go to. And honestly, the first step might not be, ideal. I think that's what a lot of people think. I want to make this first step my dream house or my dream.
In terms of where you move to, first of all, it doesn't always work like that, does it?
So make sure you keep yourselves flexible and have an open mind. Even if you do get here, you can explore more, travel more, etc.
Exactly. But know something about New Zealand, have a think about where you might want to live, and that helps us as well in terms of doing a job search. So and then very important, of course, is setting a time frame. Because if you keep an open-ended goal, it
kind of never happens.
No.
So make sure you have a time frame set for yourself and your family of when you want to move, and then work backwards.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, we know with some people it all can just drift, and then 2 years later, etc. And realistically, you know, if you haven't started your registration yet or planning the visa side of things, if you started that tomorrow, you could be in New Zealand within 4 to 6 months.
Yes.
And so that is realistic. So I guess the choice is yours in terms of you know, how quickly you want to move and how fast you want to go through the process. But using our support in helping you do that, then it's simple enough to be here within that time frame.
And right now it's actually a great time to move because employers are looking for people. Immigration policies are open to midwives, so it's a great time to make a move.
And it's spring. And it's going to be summer soon. And we're looking forward to a lovely long Christmas holiday.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So hopefully we managed to keep you online despite the little technical glitch. And I hope that you found the information informative. Of course, we're here. We'll put our details in the follow-up email, so you can contact us. So we're here for any specific questions. We are just posting up a link now, I believe, in the chat. So yes, it is already there. And so that's just a short form just to provide us a little bit more information about you before we maybe arrange a time to meet you. So if you're interested in meeting with us, fill in that form, take 2 seconds, and we'll make a time to catch up with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you, Zinni.
Thanks, Jo. Lots of information.
Yeah, exactly. And we look forward to hopefully helping you on your journey to New Zealand. Thank you so
everyone.
much. Goodbye.